Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on Beyond the Frame, sponsored by Pba Junior Program. We have a great guest with us today. Her name is Colie Edison. You may know of her. She's kind of important. She's kind of famous. And recently, as you well know, she was on Beyond the Frame. Yeah, she's on Beyond the Frame now. She was on Undercover Boss on CBS for Bolero. Colie Edison, welcome to Beyond the Frame, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here.
Colie, I was so excited when I saw that you guys were, promoting that that Bolero was going to be on Beyond the Frame. Or there we go again. Apparently, I run that show too, on Undercover Boss. I love this show. I've watched it for many years, and of course, probably like the average viewer, I end up crying every friggin' episode. I can't help it. It's just the way it is. You portray people with really positive values. You show life how it really is. And, I like that. When I saw that you were coming and doing bowling centers, I'm like, ooh, this has the potential to be juicy, delicious, controversial, and all of that. So tell me a little bit about your journey to get to become your alter ego. Tell us a little bit about Michelle.
Yeah, so the process, if you can believe it, took quite a long time. CBS and their production team had reached out to us to take part in the show. And I think a big part of that was we have a very compelling story to tell, right?
You do.
If you know the Bolero Corp story, we went from 5 centers to 272 centers overnight, now with over 300 bowling centers in the US, Mexico, and Canada. So I think with that scale, you at the time, obviously things are different now, but we had 10,000 employees. And so think about how many stories there are within that employee base. And so we filmed this show actually last October, which is why you don't see mask wearing, you don't see PPE, you don't see every other lane. And it was a 2-week process. I was traveling all over the country. As you saw, we were in Connecticut, New Jersey, Atlanta. The hardest part for me was leaving my then 1-year-old daughter home for the 2 weeks.
Sure.
And yeah, I was in costume. I had no say as to what my costume would be. So they went all out. Fun fact is that the wig I wore, actually Idina Menzel wore the same wig in the celebrity version of Undercover Boss.
That is amazing. I didn't know that.
No, you'd love that one.
I do love that. I mean, did you get to keep the wig? Did you steal it? That's an eBay.
No, I would have a great Halloween costume if I got
Yes,
to keep
you would. So I love the makeup. They showed you getting makeup. Did they put freckles on you?
They painted freckles on my face every day. And I know I am very privileged. I have nothing that I can complain about, but let me complain about first world problems. Having freckles painted on your face daily is like flicking wet paint onto your face. And it only took a couple minutes, but they were the worst minutes of every day.
For sure, I can imagine. Well, they look so realistic because when they would show a close-up of you, well, first of all, even from far away, I'm like, her skin is different. But then when they showed a close-up of you, I was like, did they really freckles? She doesn't have freckles. It was so good. And we talked a little bit yesterday in our little pre-call, and you said you were worried at one point when you had to put the earpiece in at the counter in front of her name was Natasha, right? The events coordinator girl.
Yeah, in front of Natasha. I think this happened when I was in front of Hannah, because they made us get on mic while she was a server, and everyone is really mic'd up in the centers. And I was really nervous because it's sort of like this, and I'm putting it in my ear, and you can see that this is a wig as I was doing it. But no one's paying attention to you. Because a fun fact is when I was actually with Natasha and we met the league bowlers at Bolero Milford, I introduced myself. Oh, you're Bob. Hi, I'm Colie. I mean, Michelle. And it didn't make the cameras, but you also realize how no one listens when you say your name. When you introduce yourself, like no one's really listening to you.
Especially at I hate to say it, but especially a server. I can't tell you how many times we've gone to a restaurant and the person introduced himself, and literally 40 seconds later, I'm like, what's our server's name? Because you're just tuned out. But that would have been a humorous little gaffe to show on camera there.
I know.
They did show quite a bit. You talked about some, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, I'm going a little bit ahead of myself here. By the way, we have many people watching live with us today, and hello to our regulars. If you have a question you want to ask Colie, by all means, please type it in the chat. I'm kind of monitoring it over here on my other monitor, so I'm not being rude when I turn my head. I mean, I can be rude, but Mexican road. So anyway, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on our show, our platform that we've created here is really for all people in a bowling centric or entertainment business. In today's day and age, we call it best practices for today's operators. We try to give them, tips and tricks to improve their business, motivational things. We talk honestly and openly about situations and problems that are occurring within our industry and others that we can learn from. And your journey into your centers deep undercover really has a large value to everyone watching, whether you're part of a multi-chain unit or you're a one-off owner, mom and pop owner. There's so much that people could learn by watching the show, understanding what you learned, and then seeing how that may apply to them. So I want to kind of recap some of the things you said in the intro to the show, which I was like, yes, yes, yes. One of the big things you said you were focusing on as a corporation was modernization. That was important to you to get your centers ready for another generation to come and enjoy. So it was a better experience for them, more like what they're looking to expect in all these entertainment venues that are popping up, right? And so with that comes difficult changes, well, all change is difficult, right? As you well said, but food and beverage, service areas, and then having more choices for guests to do while they're in your facility, such as redemption, laser tag, whatever that may be, wherever the location is. But I found it very interesting that your corporation does almost $1 billion a year, and 100 million of that is events. Now let's take a step back, because I gotta assume that ratio is probably good across the board for most centers if they're doing it right, So one of the things that you had issues with at one of the first stops was the outdated or multiple systems to both track POS and or turn on the lanes. Like Daniel said, we got to match what we do here in our vector system over here, because you're not using the Brunswick POS that comes with that scoring system. A lot of our customers have our products in their center. They might have our POS, but they might also not have Cubica POS. And my good friend Dan Patterson also, up in Menasha, Wisconsin, at his new Sabre Lanes, he doesn't have our POS, so he's got to work around himself for now. I watch it firsthand. How important is that guest experience during check-in to you, in your mind?
Yeah, so I think of any time spent at check-in is time lost on the lanes, in the arcade, or at the bar. So you want to make that process as seamless as possible. And you will not always be able to fund, a total remodel of the POS. Luckily, we've been fortunate enough to put dollars behind, what that user experience looked like, because we work very closely with our POS partners and we have a custom solution. But speaking in broad terms, you want to make the guest experience as seamless as possible. And to do that, you need to make the employee experience as seamless as possible. So, everything that you're thinking about for what your guest will enjoy, think about what the barriers to entry might be. Hey, if I have to wait in a long line, hey, if I have to, wait for my front desk associate to figure out what they're doing, that's all going to lead to customer dissatisfaction. Where can you do it? We have some proprietary systems that we've put into place, but ultimately it's about the user experience is two ways. It's guest experience and it's employee experience.
Right. And if the employee experience is terrible for them, that's translating into the guest. They're not happy. They're frustrated you were frustrated trying to make sure both systems matched. And, you were being coached by someone who knew them inside and out. So I can only imagine how many centers across the country face similar problems, either undertrained or not. You're not setting your employees up to be successful when you don't give them.
Yeah. And I think what you saw there, you just hit the right word. It's training. So Danny was very familiar with the system. So yes, it was to a newbie, it was scary. There were two systems. Sure. I didn't know how to use it. But if you have a well-trained associate, especially in a management position, you can have a million systems, as long as your million point of sale systems or whatever it is. But as long as your internal systems are well-written and well-trained, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, when you have people who are well-trained and they know that it's not an issue, that becomes not an issue for them. They can move a customer quickly. It's seamless for them. Well, let's move ahead a little bit, because you went to another location. This is the one with Natasha, where she didn't follow the protocol right off the bat. We all try to put even when I've worked with one-off owners like Guy Kaminsky, for example, in South Africa, mom and pop centers that's all they've ever done, and they don't really have like an employee handbook or anything. But more and more places are looking and saying the best thing for me and my business is to be on the same page with every employee. So maybe even if I only have one 24-lane bowling center that we run as a family forever, if I have an employee, I probably should have a set of guidelines and rules and standards for them to follow. So obviously when you work for Bolero, those are already in place for you, and it's management's job to ensure that they're followed, so to speak. But how important are standards overall, would you say?
So I think it's essential that you equip your staff with, and this is really your management staff, with enough authority to make those important decisions of where standards come into play and where you need to be autonomous, right? So that level of following the standards, but having a level of autonomy is really important. What you saw with Natasha, the planogram, right, for the birthday party setup, it does say use your own creativity, be artistic, have fun with it. But plates are going to go here, cups are going to go here, forks are going to go here, knives are going to go, right? So that's where you can really see the balance between standard operating procedures, but autonomy, and where do they come into place. And the more that you follow your SOPs, the more autonomy you can give to your associates, because you know that you're all playing by the same rules.
And oftentimes we preach when we're working with clients and customers, at least on the virtual marketing manager side for us, we'll tell people, look, when you're ready to write SOP, you really need to involve your key staff and your high-level employees, because they will write that for you in the long run. They're the ones on the front line doing the job. And then even more importantly, when they're a part of the process of writing this, the absorption rate and the adoption rate is so much higher because it's their own ideas also. So good points there that you've made with your staff. Can we talk about Jody for a moment, the mechanic?
Oh my God, out of he was just made for this show.
He was. I look back at him and his role that you portrayed with him, what happened, and I see at least 3 or 4 mechanics that I've had in my past that's a Jody right there. They're in it for the whole right reasons. They're following all the rules. They're compassionate to their fellow employees, but they're also smart enough not to just let anybody have the job. They're not looking for a heartbeat. They're looking for somebody who is going to fit that job. And so kudos to him for doing that. Is Jody still doing well after the pandemic? Have you found out?
Yeah, we found out Jody's doing well. Got to travel a little bit to that Atlantic Station Center that actually this probably got cut from the show, but we talked about him being involved in a new build, which we just opened, Atlantic Station, which we're super excited about down in the heart of Atlanta.
Nice.
And Jody is just an all-around good guy. His wife came and brought me chili too. And I ate it. It was delicious. But yeah, those are the types of people who, he doesn't want to retire anytime soon, but now he has the funds that he'll be able to do it. And his loyalty and commitment, but also his passion and his care, right? Like he knew I was scared to get into the pin setter, and he wasn't going to let me do it unless I felt totally safe. And I said, I made a call to Larry Ross and I begged him to tell me it wasn't safe so that I couldn't do it. And Larry said, oh, no, it's safe. Go ahead, go in. As long as it's OSHA and it's lockout, tag out, it was. And, I felt like Jody really represents so many of our frontline associates who have such big hearts and such great, just a great perspective and why they're involved.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Big chains always get bashed by customers, no matter who, Walmart, Kmart, whatever. They all get Target. And in your case, because you're the largest owner operator in the country, in the globe, really, when you think about it, of course you're a target for that. But I'm not one to jump on that bandwagon all the time. When there's criticism being handed out, it's fair, but you also have to really go out of your way to point out all the good things that are because of this. Because I think that you guys have really pushed the entire industry in a direction that it wasn't heading in for a while. It was very stagnant. So as a corporation, kudos to you guys.
Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. I mean, it is what it is. You're the model that people look at, right? Well, Bolero does this. Well, Bolero's doing this. even if I'm not in your market, because you aren't in every market, right? You may not be in the
Right.
middle of Topeka, Kansas. I can't remember. Maybe you are in Kansas, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? People look to the leaders in the industry and say, well, how are they making it work? And there's a lot of concern early on by league bowlers when Bolero and AMF at that point took over a lot of centers and made some hard changes that you talked about. You said, look, we need to change things like we might have to move leagues out at key times. You know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night might not be the right night to have a mixed couples league once a month. So I can screw out all my open play bowlers from coming in because we're just teaching them don't come on Saturday night because we can't host you. And I agree, if you're going to have revenue, you need to have time for them to come. So, but league bowlers take it very personally. Oh, you don't want our business. That's not the case. And I see that Bolero has really done a complete 180 lately in the past 3 years, I'd say, saying, no, we want leagues. We're going to nurture leagues. We're going to put them in the right place at the right time for them and for us. And I think that our traditional non-corporate centers are also looking at that kind of business model and saying, that could work for me also.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, there's this old idea that you have to do it, leagues have to be at this time, and if they're not at this time, then you're not treating the leagues fairly.
Yeah.
And you know, we took all of that to heart, and we said we have 3 audience segments. We have open play, we have events, and we have league, and
Yep.
we can find dates and times for all of these groups of people to enjoy our properties together. And that's really what we did. And over the last 3 years, we built a dedicated team just to our league base. We have 200,000 league bowlers, and you know, we strongly support them with marketing programs and discount programs and this tournament and that tournament. And we're working on it because we know how important they are. And we're also big enough and smart enough to say, hey, we made some mistakes, right? Like we didn't do everything perfectly and we work really fast. So we may have moved your league and now we've shifted some things. So can your league come back? And what can we do to get you back? And I think so many bowlers, you know, want to say, now I'm never going to go back there. They did me wrong. And I would just say change and evolution is so necessary in our sport. We need to be supporting one another. Bolero centers are great centers to have a league. And while it may not be able to happen on a Saturday night, can you get more out of it if you have it on a Wednesday afternoon? You know, is there more opportunity for you and your friends and you and your colleagues to bowl on a Wednesday night when you couldn't have done that on a Saturday night? And I think it's all about looking at what we do. We have a lane grid, right? This is not something that every center does, but how do you move the pieces of the puzzle so that everyone can work harmoniously together? And a big kudos to my operations team and my events team who've said, I need this space in this schedule for events. And I do a ton of birthday parties at this time. And an ops team and a league team will say, okay, great, but we have this league that's supposed to come in at that time every other Thursday. So then let's work together and figure it out. And then, you know, ultimately using technology to support all of that so that you can take the onus off the manual labor, manual side of things and have technology have the solutions for you.
Right. The communication is the key. I personally noticed that when I bowled our last season at Bolero Woodland, that we had a great relationship with the staff and the management. And we did have to, you know, forego a week here and there because of corporate events that were pre-booked or going to be booked, but it was handled very well. And I know of private centers that do the same type of thing. So, you know, I think that it's all good for everybody in the long run when it comes to scheduling. You have your own way to do it. We have our own way to do it, but you have to make time and room for all your parts of business when you can, or you're going to risk losing them altogether. So yeah, thanks for doing that. But the other problem that you outlined here is, I'm shifting completely different gears now, overlooking some talent maybe that hasn't been put into full-time. How would an independent proprietor kind of look at that problem? And maybe what is your take on that for somebody who doesn't have a system in place?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything is so different now with COVID and you know, the need to get people employed. But again, that all comes back to communication. So, you know, if an independent proprietor has an hourly associate who wants more hours, what does that feedback cycle look like? You know, when are you doing reviews? When are you speaking to your associates?
Well, are they even doing reviews?
Right. Are you doing reviews? Do you have a feedback loop that's going to go from the top to bottom so that you can be aware of everything? Now, what I observed with Hannah was that there was a feedback loop, but it wasn't going high enough. So, you know, there was opportunities for our higher level HR team members to step in and help out that just wasn't fully working the way we had planned. So it was great exposure for me to see that now at a much smaller center, that needs to happen on a more one-to-one basis.
Sure.
And so I think just communication between management back up to senior management, and senior management down to the associate level is just super important.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, Hannah, I would snatch her up in a heartbeat for any business I ran. That girl has the right, kudos to you for finding her. I love Hannah. I love me some Hannah. I was really I was cheering for her. This is what this show's all about, right?
It is.
You're a geeky court reporter. Are they still called stenographers? Is that what it is?
I think this is the modern word for
version
it.
Of it. Court reporter. Yes. Okay, because that seemed like sexist.
Because they do it digitally. They do it digitally now.
Oh, it's not with that weird
it's
machine.
I don't really know.
I never understood it anyway, but it was always fascinating to me because it was how can somebody track all that? But you don't actually have those skills. You just know about that industry.
Yeah, so part of building up my ruse identity was to use things that I knew so that it would be more familiar to me. My father works in deposition services, so he works with a lot of court reporters. So I was like, all right, I'll take that job. My sister's name is Michelle, so I took her name. I was from Florida, which is where my mother was living. So I incorporated a lot of things that I knew in order to build my identity.
Did you almost get busted at any point in time besides the wig incident? Did you sniff that anybody was on to you?
I think that Jody, somebody said something to Jody, but Jody was clueless. He had no idea. No, I'll tell you, this production team does such a great job. So everyone thought we were on another show. So it makes sense that there's cameras there because they all think that I'm trying to find my second career in the bowling hospitality industry. So there's not a lot of questioning of why are there cameras here? What's going on? They think it's this other show. And so no, we were fortunate no one caught on.
That's awesome. That is so good. What is your overall takeaway from that experience? What did you learn about yourself that day, or those days, I should say, those 2 weeks?
I think the biggest thing I learned was that everybody is going through a struggle that you might not know about. And there's varying degrees of those struggles, but it taught me to be more empathetic than I've ever been before. And, I learned a lot of things about the business, but overall it was learning about people. And it was understanding that the real heart of the Bolero Corporation is in our frontline associates, and that we can deliver and execute the best corporate plans and put those policies into place. But ultimately it's a person. And this is a people business. This is not a what's on paper business. I always tell people, I've been in this industry going on 13 years. I'm in the industry of fun. At the end of the day, my job is to get more people to go bowling. And why do you go bowling? You go bowling to have fun. Yes, you can be competitive, and I run the PBA tour and I've seen the best competitors in the world. And you can also be a 98-year-old grandma, throw it granny style, and not hit one pin and have the best time also. And so I think at the core of what we do, we are a for-profit business. And I want to try to, get the most profit out of everything that we do. And we want to be, a highly profitable organization. But this is a people business. It's the people who run your centers, who have so much invested that you might not know. When I got to speak to Danny, and he said he loves to talk to people higher up in the company because he has so much heart for the organization. Wow, that took me aback. When I spent time with Hannah and understood how long it takes her to just get to work, but she loves what she does, I would have never had that type of exposure had it not been for this show. And so I think about, putting myself in other people's shoes. And I think empathy is something that this world could use a lot more of right now.
Sure, I agree with that. And especially with the COVID nature of our business right now, we've had to change. So change is happening, not because we chose it, but because we have to do it, right? I think, for what looking outside, looking in, it's kind of similar in the sense that you can say, I'm going to make a change with my business. In your case, I'm going to go in, I'm going to find out, we're going to make some changes, we're going to make our business better, we're going to make our policy, whatever that may be. But that was a conscious decision. COVID unconsciously is making you change your business. But do you have to be a victim of it, or can you take it by the horns and say, we have to change? That's great. Well, how can I do this in the best fashion for me and my business? And some of the things that you found out would be the same things that a one-off operator would find out on their own. My point to the whole thing is, Colie just did the work for you. Now just apply it to your situation, right? Just look at your own staff. Maybe you have these one-on-one conversations with these people that you know are fit in some of these kinds of roles that you saw on the show, right? Everybody has those employees that work for them that would come to work if they had a half a kidney left and 1 pint of blood in their body and needed a respirator. They would still be there. We know those people. They work for all of us.
And I'd say all they're looking for is recognition.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, a lot of times that doesn't mean a paycheck. It doesn't mean a promotion. It means you're doing a really good job, Jay, and I'm so glad you're on the team.
And that really makes a gigantic difference when you can do that. So all of our operators watching, look at what you can do within your own business and say, where are my opportunities to make a difference here? Where are my opportunities to learn? And how can I change the way I need to for my business, given the fact that we have to do some changing now? Now is a perfect time because you can slip some of those other changes in with the pandemic. Nobody's the wiser, right? You want to change your operating hours because why do I need to be open from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. every Monday? I have no business, you know?
That's right.
That's 3 people minimally, even on a smaller center that payroll. Well, one of them's me, so it's really only 2. Do you need those 2 people? Do you have to be open for that $86 in revenue? It might not be the right move, you know, for you to stay open, but it might be in the long run. In the long run, I might say, I'm going to do it because I want to do it. But if I'm looking at it from a business point of view, like you've done with many of your facilities, we don't need to be open that early. And that was a struggle for traditionalists when you first made some changes. But you know what I see happening? I see regular operators doing the exact same thing across the country. They took your lead and they said, well, if somebody else is doing it and being profitable, maybe I should look at it. So, you know, these changes.
I think it's about, in this pandemic environment, it's about controlling the things that you can control.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that's out of our control. You know, we operate in 300 different markets, which means 300 different local guidelines. So in one center, we have 25% capacity and we can't serve beer unless we serve food. And then down the street, you're at 50% capacity and you can't serve food at all. Like, it is crazy. It's wild. You're not going to be able to control those things, but there are things that you can control in this time. And that's what you need to focus on right now.
Right. Well, thank you. That's a good point. I agree. We've been kind of preaching that all along, but to see somebody like yourself preach it, you're just like the Jerry Falwell of the preaching now. So thank you. All right, here we go. I'm going to switch gears a little bit to the Pba. Are you good? I'm
good.
Yeah. First of all, I fell over when I saw the Pba Junior Program come out. I was like, ta-da! Wow. Talk about a natural fit. Talk about, I think, the right thing for the industry. That segment of the competitive bowling world has been strong and continues to be strong. Yet there's no Saturday morning leagues at 99% of the bowling centers anymore. So I've said, where are these kids learning how to bowl? They're not packing it, you know, the bowling center from 9 to noon on Saturdays with 5 on a lane, and you know, you don't have 300 kids in it. You just don't have that. But yet the passion is still there. The level of competition is even greater than it may have been in the past. And this brings us to the change portion. How do young people today become interested, impressed? And I say impressed not because they're have an impression made on them is what I mean to say. And you know, it's digital. It's all video, right? It's the way that they operate. They don't know life without this in their hand. They've never known a life without it. So why are we so against using this as a whole, as an industry? You know, we're like you said, the technology is behind. We're kind of still behind that curve a little bit, but I think we're moving in that direction. And the Pba Youth Program is a prime example, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me, I think, how do I get them interested? Well, I think about what has the biggest reach. That's obviously the Pba televised telecasts, right? So I'm on broadcast TV. If I can reach 1 million people, which is what a top Fox broadcast show can do for us, let me put on the best bowlers in the best environment with the best storytelling, with the best technology. Now you're seeing Strike Track and you're seeing 3D Strike Track, and you know exactly where the ball needs to go. These are the little changes that we've started to make that get the younger audiences interested. And now they want to say, hey, you just won $100,000 doing that? I can do that. Where am I going to go do that? At my local bowling center. And now I want to get affiliations with the Pba. Just the same way that there's a junior NBA program, we launched the Pba Junior Program because we want to have that next generation of bowlers built up within our system. And, what does that mean? That means clinics and pro-ams with pro staffers, and they got to meet Kyle and they got to meet all of these great players. And then having, intense competitions. And this was just the first micro step of what we're going to be launching with Pba Junior. Mike Sleds, who's on our team, is leading this program, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to have more regional events. We're going to have more clinics. We're going to have more pro-ams, big prize money. And, we're really looking forward to having the national event, which is the finals of the junior regional tournament, aligned with one of the first TV shows that we'll do. So that'll be in either January or February of next year.
Awesome. Congratulations on that. I hope you continue to partner with other big names within our industry that are doing similar work. I think there's a lot that can be gained there. There are many, qualified youth organizers, shall we say, from the Storm Youth Series to, several others. I shouldn't have started to name because now I'm going to feel bad that I didn't name everybody. So I apologize to you if I didn't name.
Storm was a big sponsor for us this year, so we do give a big thank you to Storm.
Yes, thank you. The other thing I see, for the longest time, we didn't have the live sports on TV, right? Because of COVID, but yet you had shows in the bag that you were clever enough to say, oh no, we're going to show these right now. But you also filmed new shows during COVID, and they had some unique formats. And they got—
Well, Jen, we didn't have any shows in the bag. Everything that we did was new.
That's right.
Yeah. So what happened is in March, I was on one of the last flights out to Vegas. Actually, Chris Paul just announced that he's going to be, HBO just bought the rights to his new documentary called The Day the Sports World Stood Still, which was March 11th. And we were out on March 15th with our final event of the World Series of Bowling that we just got on TV. Thankfully, no fans there. Jason won and got him to have the Super Slam. It was awesome. But then it was, shut down city. And we just really had to be two words: creative and flexible. We want to produce content. We know that our partners at Fox want content. What can we do? So we came up with these great formats in June. We did the Strike Derby. We did the Summer Clash. We came back in July with, on CBS Sports Network, the Tour Finals, and then the PBA King of the Lanes. So, that was all original programming that was not originally scheduled. And it was about working with our athletes to keep them safe and secure during the time, working with our great partners at Fox for distribution, and having an amazing support staff from, my team with Carissa and Dave Bruner, who oversee production, Tom Clark overseeing the commissioner side of things, and really just doing everything we could to get these shows on the air.
I really think that, the younger audiences that respond to these types of shows, I'm saying that you guys got great ratings, not only because, you were one of the few live events or new events that were showing on TV, but because of the formats. They were so different. They were interesting. They weren't traditional, and people had to watch. They couldn't just go, I'll wait and see who's in the stepladder and I'll just watch see the final results, because it wasn't like that, right? It was very different. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not a traditionalist at heart. I respect tradition, but it's not my A game. And I know that in our industry, traditionalism is like whoosh, right up there. So many people are. I think it's time we accept the fact that traditional things are great and honor them. But if we don't move on the change, all those young folk are going to be going, yeah, well, that was kind of fun. Next, and we don't want that. This is an opportunity as an industry and as a sport. The industry is not going anywhere. People are always going to want to have a good time, but the sport part of our industry really needs our ability to be pivotable, flexible, to allow that change to happen organically. And it may be not what you think it should be or what I think it should be, but what they end up thinking it should be, right? Which is hard.
So in my role as Chief Customer Officer for Bolero, I try to see things through the customer's eyes. What is the best customer experience? When I translate that onto the PBA side, it's what do the audiences want? And why does the audience matter? Well, because it all works back into funding the PBA. We need larger audiences watching so that we can have more sponsorship dollars. We could put those dollars into prize funds, and we can continue to build bigger and better prize funds and player development programs so we can have more pros on the tour who are really talented. I have faced a lot of pushback, but I can tell you that the big surprise is I've had a lot of supporters come out from a lot of different places and say, we understand what you're doing. I mean, finishing the 2020 tour during this pandemic has been, I'm so proud of that achievement. I'm so proud that we were able to come together and do it. Jay, I shared with you my tagline for the PBA is honor tradition, but embrace change. And I think that there are a lot of little steps that we're going to have to take. But it's going to be a big step forward in the long run. And you have to believe, I have so much passion for this because I'm a marketer, I'm a communicator, and I see this as being an amazing platform to tell an amazing story. And that story is the sport of bowling.
It's such a relatable sport, a relatable way to have people be engaged with you. They can really look at, especially professional bowlers, they just seem more real than this celebrity basketball player who makes $46 million in 3 years because he had a really good whatever and he's talented. Well, these guys don't make $46 million. And the public knows that. They know that, these aren't some rich, privileged people. They are working hard for their money. So I think they resonate really well with the average folks that are watching, and they can relate to them. So they're going to want more of that. They're going to want to see that. All right. Beautiful job with that. Thank you for that. I'm going to switch a little bit again because I want to talk to you about what the future of Bolero Corp looks like from an entertainment perspective. It seems like, from my point of view, what I see in this Texas area, I see several centers being modernized and changing from one of your league brands like an AMF center to maybe like a Bolero center per se. Mm-hmm. And I see that you're increasing the square footage for things like redemption and other attractions. You're making a really big dent in food and beverage with some brand new and ever-changing menu options that are interesting, even if you go every week. What else is on the horizon for you guys?
Yeah, I think, we've always said, and my boss, Tom Shannon, always says this, we are not going to change the core. We're only going to change the wrapper. The core of what we do is the most fun sport, leisure activity. It's bowling, and everybody loves to go. I never talk to anybody that says they have a bad time going bowling. So you need to keep that, but continue to make everything around it fresh. And the number one keyword I use is relevant. Bolero is just this, in the past 2 months, opened up 3 new centers in the middle of a pandemic in Arlington, Virginia, in Dania Beach, Florida, and just recently in Atlantic Station, Atlanta. So I think we'll continue to grow, and we'll continue to grow through acquisitions and new builds and conversions. But I think it's about staying relevant, about listening to your consumers and your customers. What do they want? How do you meet those challenges? And on really a not consumer facing thing, but ultimately is technology. If you go to some of our centers, we have kiosks, and kiosks is a great way to minimize your reliance on your server labor.
Yeah.
Yep. And to put all that into technology, but also we just introduced same day lane reservations online, which is great for this climate. We have a custom proprietary booking system that we're continuing to advance. So I think, using technology and digitalization is really important. And I think that's one of the keys to growth going forward for Bolero.
It is. And it's a key for anybody to want to grow. They need to listen to their customer base, and they need to make those changes that are the most logical and that they can afford to do. And if you can't afford to do it, put it on that list and work towards those goals, because just because you can't afford to do it doesn't mean you shouldn't be working towards doing it, right? And that's, I think, one of the hardest things that independent proprietors face is they're like, well, I just don't have any money, so I can't do anything. Well, you have a lot you can do to get that money. And I've heard, did you say this? No, somebody else said, raindrops fill buckets. Oh, that was that was Amy Arcuri from BPAA when she was talking about her Smart Buy program and how that, proprietors can get back from that, refunds, et cetera. All those drops fill a bucket. If you want to just fill the bucket from the spigot, that's great, but you don't have a spigot. You got to make it work. So thank you so much, Colie, for being here. I'm going to leave you the final word to our membership. Nobody asked me a question. I think they're all afraid of me.
Oh, they might be afraid of me too. Yeah, no, I would just say, if you love bowling, watch the PBA, because it's going to be, we're continuing to change it, and this is all needs to work together. The more people watching bowling equals the more people going bowling, whether that's at my center or your center. I don't care. Let's just get them bowling.
Yes.
There's so much room for us in pop culture and to be relevant. This is going to be a hard time for all of us the next 9 months, but we'll get through this together. So watch bowling because it will encourage people to go bowling. If your centers are not watching PBA this Sunday, turn it on. Next Sunday, turn it on. Get FS1 because it's all going to work together. And in the long run, we're all going to benefit because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. What's good for bowling is good for all of us.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. Colie Edison, Chief Customer Officer, correct, at Bolero Corp. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your journey on Undercover Boss and your insight into the industry and the PBA. I really appreciate it. So does our watchers here, and we appreciate your time. So until next episode, you're very welcome. Until next episode, remember, you stay in the right frame of mind and we'll help you get there. Thanks again on behalf of Pba AMF and J Nephew and Colie Edison. We appreciate you. Have a great day.